to the question of how much of it is in our neurology and our neurobiology and our chemistry, how much of it is environment. Nobody fucking knows the answer. So there are studies that are pointing one way and studies that are pointing the other way. If you like to read, if you're a research nerd like I am, take it all with a grain of salt. What we know now and how we're wired as human beings compared to when I went back finally to get my doctorate degree, which was in late 2000, 2008, how much more we know now than we did then is amazing. So how much more we're going to know in another 10 years, like 20 years ago will have felt like the Dark Ages, all right? So bear that in mind. Survival, social, creative. So that's the kind of like the big picture on how we're put together, and then breaking it down a little bit more. Excuse me. If we go to raw survival, how many of you guys have any water safety training? What's one of the first rules?
Don't go swimming around.
All right, and if you are going to rescue somebody, what do you not do?
Don't put yourself in danger.
Yeah, don't get close enough they can touch you. You go out there with a flotation device, you give that to them, because in this state, we are all hardcore sociopaths. We only see other humans for what they can do to help us survive. And that means if you are not sinking and you approach me, you are a flotation device, which is why so many people who are untrained who jump in water to save somebody from drowning, drown as well, because they do not see humans as humans with family, friends, loved ones. You're just a flotation device for survival. This is primitive functioning. It's pre-verbal, which is why when I said earlier, you can talk to them, but the language doesn't mean anything at all. That can also apply to somebody who is a hardcore drug addict on certain kinds of drugs. When they're in need of a fix, heroin's a brutal one. Unfortunately, it has a big uptick recently because it's the poor man's opioid is what it is. You can't get Oxycontin, you shoot up with heroin. So there's a big uptick in heroin use right now. When you are coming off of a heroin high, if you are an addict, you literally feel like you are dying. Physically, it is a brutal, brutal experience. It will put this person in the same psychological state as this person. We tend not to culturally want to think that way because there's a criminal aspect to it, and there's a behavioral aspect to it, and there's a big cost against their family and all the socio factors that go into it. But in that moment, he or she is no different than this person in how they're going to interact with you. And when it comes to avoidance and leaving and de-escalation and all that kind of stuff, you cannot de-escalate this person with language and trying to have a conversation with him about his poor choices. Not going to work. Okay, you have to acknowledge the reality that's in front of you. Social mores tribal connection equals what we call the monkey brain. Our guy in the drowning water and our addict hardcore coming down we call the lizard brain because that's so primitive. This aspect we call our monkey brain because we're social primates. It's not pejorative. In fact, I saw a lecture online from a Buddhist monk, and he used the same language. It was really cool. I was like, oh look, it's showing up in other places too. They call it the monkey mind, but we need to be in tribe. And so we have certain dynamics that come up. This dates me, but any of you guys see Mean Girls when it came out? Okay. So this is a great example of that, right? Right now, she's part of the little outcast, which is its own little tribe. She's right here in her little flannel shirt, and they're having this little conversation about how she's not following the rules, and she's a prospect right now, okay? So if they can fix her up and make her look like them, she's following the rules. Now she's wearing the right tartan. She can be like them. On Wednesdays we wear pink. That was a thing out of the movie. When you violate the rules and you sit at the table, but you're not one of them, this is where things start to go sideways. De-escalation works here if you can figure out what the monkey problem is. Is it a violation of the Mores protocols and rules? Is it a violation of terrorism? Is it a violation of, so any of those four things, if you can figure it out, you can probably de-escalate this. We're going to get into tactics and tools and how to do that a little bit later. And then human brain is what we tend to think of when we think about a lack of emotional influence. If we're going to get into the neurobiology, this is what we would call the prefrontal cortex aspect of the neocortex. That only matters if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Basically, it's the part of our brain that likes to solve puzzles and logic things out. We think, which means we're probably wrong, that the only emotion type experience that we have at this level of functioning is curiosity. It's not really an emotion, but we tend to call curiosity an emotion, so that's the connection to it. It's our ability to effectively work in a group to solve problems because we're focused on the problem. We like to puzzle things out. So as long as we're thinking about the puzzle, the whole tribal concept disappears, it doesn't matter. This is also where we can effectively work in groups to explore new territory, whether it's in a cave or it's science or whatever it is. Conflict here doesn't really happen. It's open debate and conversation and what we don't do on the internet anymore. The ability to accept different opinions as possibilities because it's puzzle solving, right? It's a state of curiosity. There's no tribal positioning here. Violence can happen here, which takes us to a more sociopathic concept. Conflict, not so much.